Let's welcome our audience. You are listening to the Gemini Legal Podcast, focused on California workers' compensation industry and the faithful practitioners. We are live at the California Applicants Attorneys Association Winter Convention in beautiful Rancho Mirage. I am Dan Mora. I am not an attorney, but I am the founder and CEO of Gemini Legal, a legal discovery company in California workers' compensation. Today, and I'm very happy to introduce Brett Borah. Brett Borah is a practitioner in Santa Clara and has been practicing for
40 years.
40 years. Excellent. So, Brett, tell us how you got into this industry.
They don't teach workers' comp very much in law school. My first job was with a general practice firm 40 years ago. The day that I walked in, I had personal injury cases, workers' comp cases, family law cases, real estate law cases, estate law cases, and you're really a general practice. The nice thing about that is that I had represented 3 generations of the same family for different things. But gradually I decided I just liked workers' comp. I thought it was more conducive to what I want to do. And so I just started gathering those cases from around the office.
And when you say more conducive to what you wanted to do, how is it different than other types of law in that respect?
Well, in family law, you wound up basically families that were breaking up, and nobody comes out ahead in that. In criminal law, there's no good solution there. So here, you can take people who are injured and being harmed by the system and try to help them get them through it as best they can. It's a complicated system, and if people don't understand
very complicated.
And nobody does understand it,
Very complicated.
You can really help people.
Yeah.
Just one example, I can remember a lady coming to me. She had a settlement. She basically just wanted to know if it was okay. It was for $4,000. And I took the case. I said, well, we can beat $4,000 for Pete's sake. We wound up settling it for $44,000. You go home at night and you feel good about what you did.
Yeah. That's we need each other. This is a necessary community because of the complexity. Subject matter experts are required everywhere, and we hear that a lot. I'm hearing a lot of feedback about quality and access to medical care. And what's your take on that? Where are we at, and where do we need to be moving towards?
40 years ago, excuse me. 40 years ago, workers' comp was really good medical care. You could get to a doctor, you could get the treatment you needed, and you could get well. It's become so poor now that, it's just a disaster. Injured workers cannot get authorization for treatment. They can't get to good doctors. They're not getting well.
Yeah. How do we fix that? What path forward do we have?
Well, right now, any injured worker, excuse me, any injured worker can select a doctor, but it has to be in the employer's medical provider network. And they control who's in and out of the network.
Gotcha. So, moving forward, how do we regain control? Advocacy for injured worker benefits and getting medical treatment seems to be the most important thing that we are focused on as an industry. And what is CAW doing? What can we do?
Well, what can we do to improve medical treatment? I don't see a lot of younger doctors coming into the practice. Typically, when we get a medical provider network from an insurance company, there are very few choices. A lot of the doctors on the list simply do not take workers' comp. A lot of them are, they just buy the Blue Cross Blue Shield network, and those doctors, they say, well, I don't do comp. Major teaching hospitals like Stanford and UCSF, they don't take workers' comp. Valley Medical Center, where I am in Santa Clara County, they don't take workers' comp cases. And so what you see are the occupational medical clinics dominating these MPNs. And when people come in to see me and they tell me that they're going to some doctor's group, I know the occupational medical clinics. I know who they are. And I ask them, how many times have you been to the clinic? And they'll say, 20 times. And I'll say, and how much did you pay for those 20 visits to the doctor? And they tell me nothing. And so I explain, you're not going to pay those doctors, and you're not going to refer anybody to those doctors. So who's the loyalty of that clinic belong to? The insurance companies. And the insurance companies do not want to provide good care.
Yeah, sad. What do you think the root is? You have smart people at Stanford, for example, that don't develop a workers' compensation track for their doctors, a teaching school like that. What do you think the root is for them avoiding putting that together?
Well, it probably has to do with the fee schedule, first of all, and the complicated reporting requirements that we have here in California. It's too much work for what you get back.
Gotcha. Well, let's switch gears a little bit. Brett, you've been a pioneer in the Subsequent Injuries Fund. Now, this is a fund that's been around for a long time, right?
Correct. It's important to understand the history of the Subsequent Injuries Fund, or Subsequent Injuries Benefits Trust Fund, as it's now known. It started back in the 1950s when guys were coming home from World War II in Korea with injuries. And a lot of employers would say, I don't want to hire that vet because if he should get hurt on my job, I don't want to be liable for all of that disability. So for one of the few times the state has really gotten something right, they stepped in and they set up the Subsequent Injuries Fund, which compensates injured workers who have significant injuries if they have pre-existing disabilities, maybe an amputation, maybe a back injury, a shoulder injury, not compensable in workers' comp because it predates the industrial injury. But when you think of the synergy between, my amputation and now a back injury, that back injury becomes much more significant than if I had been healthy beforehand.
Gotcha. So that's history, and it seems that this is we're. You said 40 years, 50 years since that was passed?
70 years.
Wow, and we're feeling because we're responsible for the records in a lot of these cases. We feel that this is becoming more popular, for lack of a better term, and I think it's due to education. And I'm baffled a little bit, or that this hasn't been utilized more. But maybe you can shed some light on why it's not as utilized as a benefit. This is a benefit for injured workers that is being left on the table. What's your take on that?
Well, it's a complicated niche within the workers' comp system. I think a lot of people don't understand it. It's more work. I think there are a lot of things that go into it that people just don't want to do it. I finally settled that case after 4 or 5 years working on it. I just want to put it in closed. I don't want to deal with it anymore. Why? It seems to me you just open it as a new case. I do it as a continuation, and I have done very nicely with it. And they're important to my clients. The benefits are so much greater, frankly, than workers' comp, that it's a whole different result that you get.
And I want to tread lightly, but is there I'm not aware, but is there a legal duty that you have to expose and expand the case to SIF?
I don't know that there's a legal requirement. I certainly think there's an ethical requirement to help your client do as well as they can through this horrendous system that we have.
Right. And we've done a lot. You've done a lot in the industry, and a lot of smart folks have done a lot to shed light on how this process works.
All right, so you start with your workers' comp claim, which might be an injured shoulder, let's say, and you settle it. You get somebody maybe $40,000 or $50,000, whatever it is, which is nice, and maybe that pays off. Maybe that pays off some of the credit card bills that they've racked up while being off work for 2 years. The Subsequent Injuries Fund looks at everything before that work-related injury. And I figure anybody who's 40 years old probably has some diabetes, some hypertension, the things that just happen in life.
Joint pain.
Absolutely, arthritis.
Yeah.
So there are a couple of thresholds that you have to meet in order to get into workers' comp. One, you have to have 5% disability on opposite and opposing extremities. So that guy with a right shoulder injury, we'll call it a right upper extremity injury, if I can find a left upper extremity injury, that's opposite and opposing. Doesn't have to just be at the left shoulder.
Gotcha.
Same thing with legs or hips. You can go both ways. So that's 5% opposite and opposing. The other way is to have the workers' comp claim settle with 35% disability with certain limitations. Once you get there, then I file my claim. There's a unit set up, the Subsequent Injuries Fund is set up. They have their own lawyers. I do the discovery on this, which is usually, as you know, as a subpoena service. I want everything this guy has wrong with him for 40 years, for a hypothetical 40-year-old. He's going to have all these things. I'm going to want his high school records because he may have had learning disabilities way back in high school, or an old football injury when he was playing high school ball, whatever it is. I'm going to send my guy to an orthopedist. I'm going to send him to a psychologist. I'm going to send him to an internal medicine doctor. There may be a cardiologist in there. I just used an ophthalmologist for a previous eye disability. It could be a variety of specialties, but I've got to get all those medical records, which is where you come in, and get where this person treated for all those prior disabilities, get the records, get them to my doctor so they can look at it and say, I see where he had that old football injury, and now he can't run up ramps anymore. He is not good on ladders anymore. Things like that.
Gotcha. What more can we do to educate the market, the applicant attorneys about this benefit, so that we can get injured workers this care and benefit that they deserve?
Well, I think most of the attorneys, at least in our association, the California Applicants Attorneys Association, they've at least heard of the SIF. They know it's out there, but they don't always know what it is, and they don't know which of their cases qualify for it.
Gotcha.
Most of the SIF cases, I'll make up a statistic, I don't know if it's right, but I would guess that probably close to half of all SIF cases in the state come out of Santa Clara County.
Wow.
Because there's about 4 or 5 of us that really understand it and key in on it.
Yeah.
We teach classes on it. I teach a class, I call it the SIBTF for Dummies. It's for people who don't know what it is. They've heard of it but don't know to do it. And so this is a way to get people to understand it.
Great. Where do you teach that class, through a university, or tell us how we can get access to that education?
I will teach that class to any chapter of CAW that invites me to come speak.
Gotcha.
I've done it as far north as San Francisco and as far south as Long Beach.
Gotcha. Excellent. Thank you for that. Yeah. Final question. I'm just curious. You have a magic wand, and you could wave it across our landscape and repair one thing. What would it be?
That's an easy one.
Okay.
I would reform the medical treatment system. It is horrible. People don't get their treatment. And I'd rather get somebody back to 100% health than get an attorney's fee. I just think that's much, much more important. I want to go back to your question about why people aren't doing SIF. One of the examples that I use, I tell people I was talking to a buddy of mine a week or two ago, and I said, "How was your weekend?" And he said, "Well, it started out okay. The family went out for a picnic, and we spread our blanket out on the grass, and we started putting out our food, and all these Canadian geese came. There are flocks of them in Northern California. They all came and ruined our picnic. They're big, they're loud, they crap all over everything. They destroyed our picnic." And I said, "Well, that's really interesting. I don't know what a Canadian goose is. I don't think I've ever seen one, and I hear they're all over the place." And the guy says, "Well, yeah, you know what they are, Brett. They're big. They've got these black feet with these skinny, long, black legs and big bulbous body that's kind of mottled black and gray and brown, long black neck with black head with these cheeks of white." And I said, "Oh, that's a Canadian goose? I hate those people." They're loud. They're not people. They're loud. They're aggressive. They steal your food. They crap all over everything. I hate those things. The moral is, if you don't know what you're looking for, you'll never find it. And I think a lot of attorneys don't know what they're looking for. And you go to them and you tell them about SIF, and they say, "Well, Brett, I know my case law. Don't you think I'd know one if I had one?" The answer is no, I don't think you will.
Right. Education. Yeah, very good, very good. Well, Brett, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate your time, your expertise, and obviously your support to associate members of CAW is noticed by everybody here. You're a champion. Thank you for being on, Mad Dog. Brett Borah, thank you.
Thank you.